Good morning. I'd like to call to order the January 2021 MTA Board Meeting held jointly with the Metro-North Railroad and Long Island Railroad Committee, New York City Transit Committee, Bridges and Tunnels Committee, Finance Committee, Audit Committee, Safety Committee, and Capital Program Oversight Committee. We are conducting this meeting remotely via Zoom and conference call. Governor Cuomo's Executive Order 202.1, which has subsequently been extended, suspends the open meetings law requirements, and accordingly any provisions in the MTA bylaws regarding public attendance at meetings and board members participating and voting by phone are also suspended. Later in the meeting, agency presidents and staff will submit procurements and actions for consideration and a vote. Your presence at this meeting and silence at the time of a vote will be considered an affirmative vote for the record. If you would like to vote no or abstain, please state your name and your vote at that time. We will now move into our virtual comment period. As in the prior month, speakers were able to register this past Monday and send in their comments. We'll play public comments now for 30 minutes and make the full public comment video available online.
Good morning and welcome everyone. We have 17 members of the public registered to speak today. The first 30 minutes of public comment will be delivered at the board meeting and the remainder will be posted online for the public and board members on January 21st. I'd like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Thank you for your patience and understanding throughout the virtual public comment session. Our first speaker will be Council Member Idanis Rodriguez.
Thank you. Although I thank the MTA for postponing the fare increase, we need to continue working together to ensure that we take the fare hike off the table completely. I personally believe that the MTA should be reformed by the federal government, and I hope again that having a new administration, we will get to include the additional financial support that the MTA need in order to take any fare hike off the table for this coming year. I also would like to see the MTA continue working, controlling the cost, and also being sure that we use additional resources such as rail yard, that the MTA should be working with the private sector to also increase its own revenue. We must also ensure that we bring back overnight services for all our essential workers and healthcare workers. Additionally, there was recently an unprovoked attack that happened yesterday in which a man was slashed inside the 42nd Street train station in Times Square. We need to address public safety in our train stations, and I know that it will require for all of us to work together. Lastly, I will end by saying that I hope that the MTA join us next month for the transportation hearing. In the past, they have refused to come and testify at the council. I feel that all we've been showing is being partner of the MTA. It is important that the leadership of the MTA, Pat Foy and the rest, come to the council and have this dialogue about the current situation of the MTA. Todos tenemos que trabajar para que el aumento se saque permanentemente en este año del plan de la MTA, pero que la MTA reciba la ayuda financiera del gobierno que a partir de estos días está encabezado por Biden y Harris. Juntos podemos asegurarnos que el sistema de transportación más grande de los Estados Unidos continúe trabajando las 24 horas y que sirva a todos los neoyorquinos, especialmente a las personas más trabajadoras. Y que la MTA venga a testificar en el hearing que tenemos en el mes de febrero, algo que se han rehusado en el pasado. Thank you, everyone.
The next speaker is Alita Dupree.
Thank you, Chair Pat Foy and members. Alita Dupree for the record. It's good to be back with you again. How about some Grand Central Terminal for you? We're in a new year. Thank you for finishing Omni and the subway and the buses. Something to be really proud of. It's going to help a lot of people. Now let's see what it's going to look like on the rails. and to get the card and the app out so we can have full participation. As we go into a new administration and look for more funding, I ask that you keep ADA work in mind. I'd really like to see us finish the subway with all ADA by 2030. It's a big lift, but I think we can do it. And thank you for not taking up the issue of fares right now. I'm not a big fan of a fare increase, but I know that someday we're going to have to reckon with that. I do ask, though, that we use the opportunity to improve our systems of managing fare, which that was part of the recent proposals, because we can help a lot of people by including them in these new and better methods of managing fare. And as I think we're going to have more climate-friendly proposals coming out of the new administration, I continue to push for the ideas of hydrogen and electricity for our system. And let's not forget the fun that our system has to offer, because I'm not all business here. You know, when I think of Jerry Rafferty's song Night Owl, I think of riding the Long Island Railroad and Metro North at night. And while Baker Street is in London in his song, I still think of New York City. So let's continue the work of the one word that the MTA really is, and that word is legendary. Thank you.
The next speaker is Lisa Daglian.
Greetings, I'm Lisa Daglian, Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. Happy New Year. It's already been quite a year and it's only 3 weeks. I'd like to note that I'm delivering these remarks on Tuesday for Thursday's board meeting. A lot is slated for the intervening days, including the governor's budget release and the inauguration, and some of our comments may no longer be relevant on Thursday. We look forward to meeting in person again and presenting our testimony on the actual meeting dates, including for committee meetings. But we're not at that point. COVID-19 remains a real threat to our health and our economy. We salute transit workers who continue to move New York and are glad they're eligible for vaccines. But until the rest of the population is, the 2021 new normal looks an awful lot like most of 2020. But there is good news. We're thrilled that fare hikes are off the table, for now. They shouldn't be considered at all this year. That projected $100 million would be better in riders' pockets. Give riders a break and incentives to come back to the system. On buses and subways, that means keeping the weekly and 30-day Metro cards to support the regular users of the system. It also means reopening 24/7 service. For commuter rail, it means pursuing pilot programs like Atlantic ticket expansion and discounted 20, 40, or 60 trip tickets with longer expiration dates to replace or complement the traditional monthly. Also good news, additional relief will come with reinstatement of FEMA reimbursement and aid to states and municipalities, along with extra funding for the MTA. The governor announced new infrastructure projects in his State of the State, and with Polly Trottenberg appointed as the new number 2 at USDOT, we're hopeful that congestion pricing will finally move ahead to pay for them. There's light at the end of the tunnel, and we deeply appreciate Governor Cuomo, Senator Schumer, and President Biden, who are committed to transit and infrastructure. Riders need your continued support too. Keep the time-based Metro cards and provide discounted rail options. Thank you.
The next speaker is Rachel Foss.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Foss, and I'm the Senior Research Analyst for reInvent Albany. We advocate for more transparent and accountable New York government, including for authorities like the MTA. Advocates worked hard to help the MTA win $4 billion in federal aid from the December federal emergency aid package, and we support the MTA receiving billions more in federal COVID aid to address its more than $8 billion deficit through 2024. At the same time, the MTA's receipt of federal aid is not a license for the governor to raid at least $600 million of MTA dedicated funding. We thank the MTA for postponing a planned fare hike, while so much about MTA finances and service remains up in the air. We remain very concerned, however, about the state's commitment to MTA's ridership, given the threat of state diversions or raids of MTA dedicated funds in the governor's executive budget. State and MTA budget documents suggest withholdings to the MTA's funds could be made permanent and become cuts. But please note, as of this recording, the state budget and any formal plan to address the current budget gaps has not yet been released and will be released later this afternoon. In July 2020, the MTA asked for $12 billion in federal emergency funding, including $600 million to compensate for the loss of state subsidies. This $600 million was in addition to the MTA spring deficit of $10.3 billion, which included COVID-19 revenue losses from ridership and dedicated taxes. The most recent cash report from the state comptroller shows New York State had nearly $30 billion in the bank as of the end of December 2020, double what it had pre-pandemic in December 2019. This cash hoard has been accumulated while many millions of dollars were withheld from the MTA. Unfortunately, there has been zero public transparency about the total amount of withholdings from the MTA and other agencies. 20 watchdog groups, including Reinvent Albany, asked the Division of the Budget in December 2020 to release detailed information about these withholdings. The MTA has done the right thing by delaying any fare increases on riders. The governor must now do his part by giving the MTA 100% of its dedicated tax receipts that come in its time of greatest need. The state must also release detailed information about any budget withholdings and proposed cuts. Thank you for your consideration.
The next speaker is Jason Anthony.
Greetings, MTA Board. Jason Anthony here from Passengers United. We started the new year, same reality, but no fare increase for now. What does mean? That means that we have the same fares, but we are dealing with the homeless in our subway system. Now we are seeing them in areas like in Lower Manhattan, like in stations like Portland Street, World Trade Center, and others. Although that this month the MTA will discuss about the R211s and the M9s. But at the same time, we are demanding the resignation of Mario Pellegrin. It is not acceptable that during the second wave of COVID-19, he decided to go north to Canada to seek refuge. Where was he during the second wave of COVID-19? So, as the Vice President of Passengers United, we demand that Mario Pellegrin will resign or he gets terminated from his position. So, that being said, Happy New Year, board members, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
The next speaker is Christopher Greif.
Good afternoon. I'm Christopher D. Greif. I've been an advocate for now almost 27 and a half years. I'm glad we're not dealing with the fare hike, but I hope we're never going to ever see the 30-day and the 7-day being discontinued. Because the one thing that a lot of people mention about discontinuing those passes, but they leave out one very important thing. The reduced fare Metro card, people with disabilities and seniors. You have a lot of people who have budget their money to make sure they can travel from a bus to a subway, bus to bus, and in case of an emergency, instead of getting a block ticket, the monthly can get them to access to another subway. This is easier for the customers for disability and seniors because a lot of low-income families budget their money. So please, I hope I ever hear that word being discontinued or cuts on anything. Because 10 years ago, we had these cuts on buses and 2 train lines. I never want to see that. Please, because we are supposed to be working as a team, and I really think we could work as a team with accessibility. And I'm very glad that we have elevators that are all being built, advocating to get necessary services and update our trains and buses for the future. We still have to continue advocating because our mission is not done yet. It's just the beginning, and we need to keep advocating. Thank you.
The next speaker is Andy Quito.
Hey, good afternoon. It's me, Andy Quito, and I'm glad that the MTA postponed the fare hikes for this year because we don't need a fare hike anymore because we already have a lot of people out of work and people don't have the money to afford more but yeah, let's move on. We're gonna talk about the Long Island Railroad right now. This past Sunday there was a service suspension because of broken around the Central Branch. Why would you send shuttle buses all the way to Babylon, even though Floral Park is a shorter distance and it's a better way because there's half-hourly service on the Hempstead Branch. It's all part of the plan, to you guys to ruin the service over there, to get them to give guys like you an excuse discontinue to like reduce service on the main line because nobody's using it. It's because your actions. This is just completely unacceptable to have shuttle buses going down to Babylon if they could go to Floral Park instead. But no. And see, everybody wants to go to the South Shore. You're directing everybody to go to the South Shore. It's all part of the plan. You know, this plan isn't working anymore. At least you guys could bring the Z train back. You know, the train from Ronkonkoma to Penn, you know, making all stops on Ronkonkoma Branch, go down the Central Branch, and then make semi-express stops on the Babylon Branch up to Jamaica, then Woodside, Penn Station. That would be a better plan, or a bus bridge. Why you guys don't do that? Oh, and one more thing, the subway system's out of control. Can you get more police at Jamaica Center? Because what I saw today, there was police, but there was people, you know, smoking a joint, you know, selling swipes, and then police were there. They just sit there doing nothing. I have a big problem with that. If other stations like in Lower Manhattan can get police, why can't us here in Jamaica? Why? It's just I just had enough. Either do that or please just get off the board if you're not going to care for riders. Thank you so much.
The next speaker is Lucas Wolpiuk.
Good day, MTA board members. Today you'll be voting on fare increases for New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North Railroad. On Monday night, I heard that the fares may not be increasing. Instead, the bridges and tunnels tolls would be increased. I hope that this means that unlimited ride Metro cards are staying. Also, I'm glad that the Long Island Railroad and Metro North will not have flat fares if what I heard is correct. Anyways, I think they have made the right move. People will switch from driving to taking mass transit. I still demand that the residents' discount for the Verrazano-Narrows Bridge is not taken away. I hope that you listen to what the traveling public talked about at last month's public hearings. I looked at the Long Island Railroad committee books and noticed that the parking garage at Westbury would be $6 for less than 20 hours of parking. If you look at how much this would cost if you rode the Long Island Railroad every weekday, you would pay around $120. I think that there should be a monthly pass that would have a discount of $10 or $20. Also, I would like to mention that the committee books were posted much later than usual. I understand that the board meeting is on Thursday instead of Wednesday, but I still think that the committee books should have been posted on Friday. Before I run out of time, I would like to mention that the mainline shutdowns need to be changed. On Sunday, the 17th of January, there was a broken rail on the Central Branch. That caused 20 to 30-minute delays on top of the 60 minutes of extra travel time. I believe that instead we should run shuttle buses to Floral Park on the Hempstead Branch. The Hempstead Branch already has half-hour.
The next speaker is Deborah Greif.
Good day, everybody. My name is Deborah Greif, and I want to thank the board for not raising the fares. I am a person with disabilities now, a senior, but not at 65 yet. I do have a half-fare Metro card that's an AutoGate card because it did break my foot more than 6 times. I appreciate that there have been more elevators being built. I would like to also say, please ramp some of the stations you can. I'd like the northbound Avenue H station to be ramped so it's easier to that, because many times I see people with disabilities and students or parents with carriages take the train, they go up the ramp and take it to Kings Highway, hope the elevator's working, go downstairs and then go to the other one, northbound. That would save a lot of time and trips. I also, for the Long Island Railroad, like the fact there are shuttle buses and shuttle trains, because we have people with disabilities who do live out on Long Island and travel on the weekends. Also, I want to thank Long Island Cares for always being there when I needed assistance. And I still don't thank Metro North for putting me in the luggage cart. I may have a walker and have a disability, but I don't belong in the luggage cart. I'm still upset and traumatized that you let this guy on the train have 6 bags of luggage, but I have to sit in the bike and luggage rack. Really discriminate. And then when I got on to go home, you didn't care that I sat. You let all the college kids sit. So I hope you can fix Metro North. Thank you.
The next speaker is Joe Kunzler.
Thank you for taking my call. this morning. I appreciate the fact that you're suspending the immoral fare increase during the global pandemic. I appreciate that. As I testified at the fair hearing, I recommend that you set up a program where tourists and business travelers can donate their unused transit fares and the days of passes that, like the 5-day and the 7-day and 31-day passes, donate the value of that to help the low-income people. I think that's really important. I also hope, on a more happier note, you'll start naming your train cars after some of your great civic heroes. I think New York City subway and buses should be telling the story of its great public servants. And noting that, if I'm a little quick with my comments, maybe we can squeeze in the last public comment, or let me just quote Lindsey Boylan from Manhattan Borough President, who I endorse, quote, "I am doing what I'm doing so you can do whatever the hell you want to do in greater peace and with the support of your community. A community that knows who you are, what you're about, and welcomes that," end quote. I ask everyone to support Lindsey Boylan for Manhattan Council President, and, want to give the microphone to somebody else. So, thank you.
The next speaker is Charlton De Souza.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charlton De Souza. I am the president of Passengers United, and I am happy that the fare increase has been put off. That's very good, but it's only for a few months. So today we are having a press conference at the governor's office, and we are demanding that there should be no fare increases across the board. And express buses should be $3 for all residents so that we can take less people off cars and put people onto buses. And there should be no service cuts on the Long Island Railroad, New York City Transit, or the Staten Island Railroad. And also, the subways are unsafe. People are being attacked. People are being stabbed. What is going on? And I've spoken to several police officers in the subway system who told me there is not enough caseworkers to help the homeless, to help the mentally ill. So my point is this. The MTA approved the contract for the Bowery Residence Committee last year, and the MTA's Inspector General did an audit. Why did the MTA board, despite the audit, continue to give them a contract? The BRC's contract should be voided, okay? They should not be allowed to work in the subways because they're not helping people. They're not doing their job. And, you don't see any caseworkers anywhere. So we are demanding today that Governor Cuomo and the MTA board deploy 400 social workers into the subway system to help the police get the homeless and mentally ill out of the subway system. What happened on Sunday when the man was electrocuted on the third rail was unacceptable. Unacceptable. We need to do better, and we demand better as passengers, because why should I have to sit next to someone without a mask with COVID-19? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
The next speaker is Peter Pullman.
My subject is fare evasion. I would like to see fresh ideas about how to stop people from not paying their fare. I see that there's a relationship between MTA and the credit card companies. I don't use it. I think it's called Omni. If there is such a relationship, there could be a connection between the credit card companies, MTA, and cell phone service providers. This would mean, with warnings at the stations, that people would be monitored, their cell phones would be monitored, that when people jump the turnstile, and I don't mean to victimize young people, but most of them who do so have the physical ability to jump turnstiles, they're young people, and I notice they all have cell phones. So if they jump the turnstile and then they go on their phone, if there were a way for MTA or the credit card companies to register that the person has jumped the turnstile and not paid, then the credit card company could charge the cardholder for the cost of a fare. There is a civil liberties component to this. but I don't see why, if MTA is already working with the credit card companies, that they couldn't also work with the cell phone service providers. That way, since GPS tells anybody where you are on your phone, then as people have cheated the system and they are on their phones, the link would be to MTA and the credit card companies. And then, if the parents are the ones that are paying the credit card bill, they'd be charged $2.75 because somebody didn't pay the fare. I know it's a novel idea, but I don't see why something like that couldn't be explored. Thank you.
The next speaker is Andy Pollock.
Good morning, Chairman Foy, members of the board, and my fellow transit advocates. I am pleased to hear for now that the fare hikes are on pause, but they're always going to be brought up in discussion, and I have a big fear that it's not off the table in calendar year 2021. What we should be doing is pausing them until at least 2023, to be fair here. However, I am in agreement in February that we should raise the tolls on the bridges and tunnels. It's not fair that we are seeing our roads getting clogged up each and every day because people are avoiding public transportation. Many of you know I live in Fresh Meadows. We heavily rely on the Long Island Expressway. The Long Island Expressway going into Nassau County has returned to pre-pandemic traffic. We had a good stretch from May until June where the LIE was clear and we could get all the way to New Hyde Park without even hitting the brakes. So raising the tolls is going to teach the motorist a lesson. Leave the car at home and come back to public transportation. More importantly, today is the first full day that Joe Biden is president of the United States. So hopefully congestion pricing is going to get done. I am certainly hoping that Pete Buttigieg and Polly Trottenberg are going to get this done in Congress, along with Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi will get it done. And more importantly, service cuts are going to be avoided because hopefully Congress will negotiate a third stimulus and the MTA will receive the $8 billion that it is requesting for this year, and the cuts can be avoided in May. So thank you all very much, and I will be back in February.
The next speaker is Yuki Endo.
Thank you all NTA members for not increasing the fare for the NTA subway buses extended identity commuter data, including the Desert Island Turnway Nice Bus, which is secondary B line Academy SIN 23-24 buses. I also agree with the listener of the locals in the Staten Island not to raise their costs on a post-pay bills because the broad channel doesn't have any hostel and the Staten Island is mainly express and car driving city. Also, the local and the Staten Island DB program need to stay. I am also upset with the Long Island Radio's neighboring weekend shutdown of no train shuttle bus. As I was speaking Jenica and Houston, which is our latest. Neighboring corridor has essential hostels, no shopping Audit. Many businesses around the neighboring are hiding bodily from pandemic and MTA refusing to provide shuttle bus for essential neighboring business. Also, most people are heading to the south or north shore community. Many businesses around the neighboring shuttle bus, including the Long Island Cap Audit, also asking for the Long Island Data shuttle bus because the nice bus is not substitute for the Long Island shuttle bus and does not run 24 hours. Thank you for your cooperation.
The next speaker is Murray Bowden.
My name is Murray Bowden and I represent concerned grandparents. We're the people that want to leave a environment that's usable to our grandchildren. Global warming is the biggest issue facing us today. A world of reduced resources and how to use them to increase safety for the riders. The MTA has been a leader in the forefront of new technologies to make it safer for us to ride the subways, the buses, and use your roadways. I take this opportunity to compliment the staff for their forward-looking thinking and increasing safety for people that use your services. The MTA is a leader in technology going forward to make a safer environment for the future. I also want to thank all those people at the MTA on a staff level who do their job exceedingly well. They need to be recognized as being the true public servants they are. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you.
The next speaker is Jeremiah Clemente.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeremiah Clemente, and I'm a student at City Tech in downtown Brooklyn, and I'm here as a member of the Maybrook Strap Hangers campaign. I live in Flatlands, Brooklyn, and rely on mass transit to get around the city, specifically taking the B41 and B46 buses, and a number of subway lines like the 2, 3, 4, 5A, and C trains. I'm glad the MTA is postponing this fare hike, but if it were to go through, it would cost me and my family more just to simply get around it to go anywhere, really. 2 of my family members are essential workers, with one of them handling the vaccine effort, and the fare hike will force them to pay more for less service. On a wider scale, this fare hike would turn people away from transit overall, forcing them to switch to cars and rideshare services, creating gridlock, slowing buses down and deterring riders from transit. Even though I'm not a car owner myself, I do have options to get other options to get around, such as shared rides. Though this is not a solution, Uber and Lyft are not a solution, as they're even less affordable. While I've taken transit recently, the B41 bus is often crowded, and I often worry about that someone on the bus won't be wearing a mask, or even worse, doing it improperly. I'm also lucky to not be affected by the overnight closures, but everyone knows someone who's working in an essential job and has been affected by the overnight subway closures. Many workers face harrowing overnight commutes from the outer boroughs to the city, offered by local bus service. The MTA cannot balance its already decimated budget on its riders and essential workers. Even with a fare increase, the MTA will only collect $79 million this year. That doesn't even come close to covering the budget deficit, and it's wrong to suggest that the fare hike is necessary to close the budget gap. The state must find new ways to balance its budget and start by taxing those who have profited from this pandemic, not on the backs of the essential workers who can barely afford rent, food, and groceries, let alone fares in this already expensive city. Members of the board, I urge you to do what's right and tell the governor to find new revenues to balance the budget. If New York wants to recover, it needs a transit system that works for everyone by being affordable, reliable, and operating 24/7.
The next speaker is Cassie Rafucci.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chairman Foy and New York City MTA board members. My name is Cassie Rafucci. I'm a private citizen of Coney Island, Brooklyn. I'm here to talk about enforcement on riders wearing masks. Every time I take this train, once a week or twice a week, I always see a lot of riders not wearing masks. And it's and I would really would like to see more enforcement on riders wearing masks, because it's like every time I take the train or the bus, I always see a lot of riders not wearing masks. So I would really would like if there is more enforcement on the public transit system, the trains, the buses, Metro North, and Long Island Railroad. Thank you.
Thanks to all our public speakers. While we are starting the new year with a new degree of hope given the coronavirus vaccine, the passage of the latest COVID relief bill last month, and the inauguration of President Biden yesterday, we haven't lost sight of the fact that we're still in the middle of a very serious public health crisis, one that tragically continues to impact the city, the state, and the MTA's heroic workforce. As we have done in prior months, we will begin today by observing a moment of silence to acknowledge members of the MTA family who have passed since our last meeting. Today, we honor members of New York City Transit and MTA Construction and Development. Sarah.
Thank you, Pat. We remember and honor today Alejandro Paredes, who is in our stations department, Ron Spruill from our track department, and TSS Derby Furman from service delivery.
Jeno.
Pat, MTA Construction and Development is mourning the loss from COVID-19 complications of Sean Blaine, age 53, who passed away on Friday, January 8th. Sean had been with the MTA since 2004, was a beloved member of the family, and leaves behind a widow, Ermin Blaine, who is herself a frontline worker as a nurse at North Shore University Hospital. We mourn the loss of Sean Blaine and honor his memory.
I now ask you all to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. For months now, we've been looking forward to the start of the Biden administration, and that day finally arrived yesterday. With President Joe Biden now in office, Senator Schumer sworn in as the new Senate Majority Leader, the first ever from New York, and the new Congress in session, we look forward to new leadership in the midst of this urgent national crisis, the pandemic and the economy, as well as the possibility for additional emergency relief. The new administration rightly recognizes the importance of mass transit, and we're eager to work with them. For the MTA, this may be a moment in which hope and history rhyme. The MTA's once-in-a-100-year financial crisis did not disappear with the end of 2020. Thankfully, another COVID relief bill was passed in December that goes a long way towards addressing the deficit in our 2021 budget. We are grateful to Senate Majority Leader Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, and the bipartisan New York delegation, led by former Appropriations Chair Nita Lowey, for their hard work and support. This additional $4 billion in emergency aid is a major step that helped us avoid severe cuts to service and layoffs of thousands of colleagues this year. But even with this infusion of aid, our out-year financial picture is grim, as we continue to face the most challenging crisis in New York State history. In December, we projected an aggregate $11.3 billion deficit for 2022 to 24. That's before cuts in expenses and other actions we're taking, but that is a huge number. Without a doubt, we still need significant additional funding from Washington to address the lasting financial impact of the pandemic. We're grateful that President Biden has already outlined a proposal to address these needs before he even took his oath of office. The American Rescue Plan rightly recognizes mass transit's continued need for federal support, not only to help cover operating expenses, but to invest in transformative capital projects. We look forward to hearing more about it and exactly what it will mean for the MTA this year and moving forward. I also want to thank the President and Senate Majority Leader Schumer for fixing the policy preventing full reimbursement for our coronavirus pandemic-related expenses. We hope that the President will go a step further and rescind the recent FEMA rule promulgated by the prior administration that eliminated funding to transit agencies and schools for cleaning and disinfecting programs in the midst of the pandemic. Cutting fundings for such programs by the prior administration made no sense, and we hope it's something the new administration will rectify. It's clear the new administration believes in transit and understands that these investments will jumpstart our economic recovery. I've said it before and I'll say it again. There can be no national rebound without a strong MTA powering New York's revival. To that end, I also want to congratulate former New York City Transportation Commissioner and former MTA Board member Polly Trottenberg on her nomination to serve as Deputy Transportation Secretary at US DOT. Polly is uniquely qualified for this critical role and is a leading expert on transportation policy, the reality on the ground, and federal funding programs. I'm confident she will be able to get big things done given her wealth of talent and experience here and in the Obama administration and working for Senator Schumer. Her selection is great news for the nation, the state and city, and the MTA. I know Sarah Feinberg would like to say a few words. Sarah.
Thanks, Pat. Just our all of Transit's deepest congratulations to Polly. We're thrilled for her, and it's good news for New York City and for New York and for the country to have someone at that level of DOT who understands New York's issues, understands MTA challenges and transit challenges, and knows where the programs are and where the funding is and how to get it out fast. So we're in good hands.
I also want to recognize, since it was just released in the last couple of minutes, the appointment of our colleague Subhash Iyer to serve as General Counsel of the FTA at US DOT. Subhash has served the Cuomo administration well, the MTA here, and was a clerk for Justice Ginsburg on the Supreme Court. And we know that Subhash will serve US DOT in the Biden administration with distinction. A few words about fare and toll policy. New Yorkers of all incomes and background depend on us to get to work, school, and so much more, especially essential workers during the last 11 months. We're dedicated to providing them with the service they need, and we recognize the hard times we're all going through right now. That's why we have decided to temporarily defer a vote on the revenue-generating fare proposals for New York City Transit, Long Island Railroad, and Metro North until later this year. While we can't indefinitely delay these actions, we wanted to acknowledge the input we've received from New Yorkers on these proposals, including that from Lucas this morning. In December, we held 8 hearings that drew record participation and input from the public. During the 2018 to 19 fare and toll review, the MTA received just over 600 public comments. This year, there were over 2,000, including comments from across the region submitted online and at one of our virtual public hearings. After considering this unprecedented volume of feedback, we are postponing a board vote on fares today. We don't want to undertake any actions at this time that could exacerbate the impacts of this pandemic, especially for the essential workers, low-income residents, and communities of color who depend on us most. However, I note that if a vote is delayed too long, the MTA may need to conduct a new cycle of fare hearings to ensure public comment remains relevant to the proposals being considered. On tolls, we will review toll proposals in February. We recognize how important existing resident discounts are to commuters on Staten Island and in Queens, and eliminating these discounts will not be considered next month. All other toll options remain on the table. I'll note that the public comment period for these proposals is open until February 16th. We will consider all feedback, but the fact is we must address our near-term deficits. That being said, I am optimistic that over the next few months we will begin to see increased signs of economic recovery for the New York region, thanks to additional federal stimulus measures, the continued vaccine rollout, and the governor's actions to stop the spread. Under Phase 1B of the state's distribution plan, transit workers are rightly recognized as essential workers and are now eligible to get their shot. I strongly encourage all MTA employees to get it as it becomes available. The state, city, and various surrounding counties have opened distribution hubs, including the state operations at the Javits Center and Aqueduct Racetrack. We're working to vaccinate as many of our employees as possible, prioritizing heroic frontline workers, but like every other agency and entity, we're severely limited by the levels of vaccines distributed by the federal government. We expect and are planning to set up our own vaccination centers at work locations system-wide, but likely not until February at this time. We will continue to keep the workforce updated on new information as we hear more from our public health partners. I understand that some may be hesitant about getting the vaccine, but the bottom line is that this shot is our shot literally to beat the virus. And if we're not convincing enough, take it from a fellow New Yorker and one of the nation's leading public health experts who has a special message for the MTA workforce.
Greetings to you all. My name is Tony Fauci, Director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the National Institutes of Health. As someone who grew up in Brooklyn, the New York Metropolitan Transit Authority has a special place in my heart. The New York City subway system is embedded in my brain. I took the subway every day to get from my home in Brooklyn to and from Regis High School in Manhattan. I would take either the BMT, what was then called the West End Line when I lived in Bensonhurst, or what was then called the Sea Beach Line when I moved to Dyker Heights. I would take it from there to 14th Street in Union Square, where I would pick up the IRT Lexington Avenue Express to 86th and Lex to get to Regis on 85th between Madison and Park. And so I can relate warmly to you folks who played an important role in my younger days as a New Yorker. And so since I care about you all, I strongly encourage all MTA workers to get vaccinated against the coronavirus. This pandemic has taken so much from us, and vaccination is the best way for us to fight back and help restore our lives. The U.S. authorized coronavirus vaccines, one made by Pfizer, the other by Moderna, are safe and they're free. And they're about 95% effective at preventing adults of all ages from getting sick. The sooner you get vaccinated, the sooner we can get our lives back and our country back on track. Throughout the U.S. pandemic, you have kept New York City's public transit moving. That is why you are essential workers at the front of the line to receive a coronavirus vaccine. Take advantage of it. Get vaccinated. To be fully protected, you need one shot plus a booster shot a few weeks later. This may save your life. I wish you all the best. Take care of yourselves, and even after you are vaccinated, stay safe by continuing to follow public health guidelines of wearing a mask. Thank you.
Thanks to Dr. Fauci, the most trusted person in America, for recording the message. Dr. Fauci was gracious when I called to ask him to record this. And as you heard, he remembered in detail his subway commute to school in Manhattan. I urge all of us to consider his words carefully. We can't pass up this opportunity to crush the virus. We've come too far, and our employees have worked so hard to keep the region moving during the pandemic. If we want to get back to normal, we need to get vaccinated, and we need to stay vigilant. That means continuing to wear masks, wash our hands regularly, maintain social distancing, and limiting unnecessary travel. A brief moment on priorities for this year. At the start of last year, I outlined priorities, issues such as improving performance and efficiency, delivering on investments, building credibility, and reimagining operations, which we've continued to focus on even as we endured the COVID-19 pandemic. This year, we revisit our critical priorities while remaining laser focused on our core mission of keeping the region moving safely and efficiently. Safety continues to be our #1 priority. The ongoing COVID health crisis has not only highlighted the importance of a safe and reliable MTA, but given us all an opportunity to go above and beyond to deliver on this commitment. The pandemic has heightened our collective responsibility to look out for one another, and we must do all our part in preserving the health and safety of our fellow passengers and colleagues. On the equity issue, 2020 provided a powerful reminder of how far we as a country still have to go towards building a just and equitable society. The COVID-19 pandemic underscores the critical nature of the MTA and the important role public transit and access plays in social equity. Equity has been a critical consideration of the work that we do and the policies we consider. And in this new year, we will continue our efforts in striving for and supporting equity for all New Yorkers, especially our minority-owned and women-owned businesses and our own workforce who keeps New York moving forward. We remain steadfast in our commitment to making sure all employees and customers are treated with respect and dignity as we strive to be a model for equity. Our ongoing commitment to improving the customer experience has made significant strides over recent years under the leadership of Avi Collins, Sarah Meyer, the agency presidents, and thousands of frontline employees who interact with riders every day as the face of the MTA. The pandemic has only accelerated our efforts to reimagine the way we engage with the public, whether it be on social media or through chat features on our apps. During this time, it made sense to focus on digital formats and establish practices that will serve us well, even after the COVID crisis subsides. Other bold and innovative actions, such as the mask force led by Sarah Meyer, around-the-clock disinfecting, the live digital subway map, and real-time capacity tracking on buses and trains, have helped consumers feel safe and empowered when using transit. I want to thank Chief Innovation Officer Mark Dowd for leading these efforts, and the teams at New York City Transit, Metro North, and Long Island Railroad in particular, who made these ideas a reality, and also developed homegrown innovation at the agencies. In the coming year, we'll continue to find ways to innovate and improve for the millions of New Yorkers who depend on us. Finally, we will continue to prioritize accountability, transparency, and efficiency through this crisis. We've been clear about the unprecedented financial challenges facing the MTA and the steps we've taken to address them, primarily by looking internally to achieve significant cost savings in overtime spending, consulting contracts, and other non-personnel expenses. We must and will deliver these savings this coming year, and I'm confident we will under the leadership of the agency presidents. Importantly, we'll also continue implementing our historic transformation plan led by Anthony McCord, which will achieve additional savings by streamlining internal processes and identifying new ways of doing business. Lastly, I want to mark a milestone for the MTA Small Business Development Program, which celebrated its 10th anniversary earlier this week, coinciding with Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The SBDP has been a critical lifeline for minority and women-owned businesses, providing far more mentoring and capacity building opportunities than any other transportation agency in the nation. Over the last decade, the program has awarded over 450 contracts, amounting to nearly $500 million, and created or maintained 11,000 jobs. This is an amazing accomplishment, and I thank MTA Chief Diversity Officer Michael Gardner for leading these efforts, which are helping to bring empowerment and increased opportunity to businesses across the region. With that, I'll turn to Pat Warren.
Thank you, Chairman. Safety Committee materials can be found in the board book. Quarterly safety statistics can be found on pages 4 through 13 of the Safety Committee book. As expected, the greatest risk to our employees remains COVID-19. Also in the Safety Committee materials, you will find a description of the 2021 Safety Committee work plan. It's on page 4. As is always the case, the safety of our employees and customers remains paramount. The increase in the number of COVID-19 cases in New York City remains of great concern to us. Currently, the city is at nearly 6% of infection for the last 7 days, with rates 2 points higher in the outlying counties. MTA's rate is half of the city's at 2.4%. Through the availability of voluntary diagnostic testing and aggressive efforts to identify close contacts, we are able to sustain the availability of our workforce such that the operations have been minimally affected. We are currently testing over 2,500 employees a week, which is about 20% higher than we predicted, which is good news. Our other efforts to protect our workforce and customers remain robust. We continue with many protocols previously established to protect our employees and customers. And just to reiterate, the numbers that are currently available are: we have provided over 21 million masks to our employees and customers, 16 million pairs of gloves, 130,000 gallons of hand sanitizer, 11 million sanitizing wipes, and 237,000 gallons of cleaning solution. Further, we continue our daily cleaning and disinfecting of stations, trains, buses, paratransit vehicles, and employee workspaces. Likewise, our air filtration enhancements in facilities, trains, and buses are cutting edge and remain a centerpiece of our efforts to protect our employees and customers. As you are aware, transportation employees have been prioritized to receive COVID-19 vaccines, which were made available to our employees just last week. Due to the great efforts of New York State, over 1,300 MTA employees have now been vaccinated, with more planned for the remainder of the month. Demand for the vaccine within our workforce currently exceeds supply. As more vaccines become available, we will ensure our employees are scheduled for inoculations. Again, I will stress that together with social distancing, mask usage remains a critical defense against contracting the virus according to the CDC, and are important to be continued even after getting vaccinated. Mask usage by our riders remains high. Our most recent surveys have found a 99% usage rate on buses and a continued 97% usage rate on the subways. And we thank our ridership for their support and respect shown to one another. In closing, we are grateful for the patronage of our customers and are committed to continuing to bring the safest ground transportation to New York. Chairman, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Pat. Let me just make a couple of comments before I ask for questions or comments from my colleagues on the board. Managing this ongoing public health crisis has been a significant team effort in the past year with tireless support from leaders across the agency. In addition to Pat, I also want to thank Mario Pelican for his leadership on COVID response efforts, including second wave preparation, along with Dr. Daria Luisi and her entire occupational health services team for helping keep all our employees healthy and safe. Paul Fama, Ralph Portnoy, and the HR and IT teams for developing employee policies and online resource portals, and each of the agency presidents for helping deftly navigate the day-to-day reality of the pandemic. Are there any questions for Pat?
Yeah, I got one, Pat.
Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, how do you account for the increase in reported customer injuries on the transit authority? It's remained relatively flat on the commuter rails during the COVID, but how do you account for the increase in customer injuries on transit authority?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Commissioner. The rates that you see in the board books are significantly skewed by how many customers we have. So when whatever when you have much lower numbers, and we're down like 65%, it causes the percentages to go higher. In reality, it is not much different than it was before, and we continue to watch it. And quite frankly, in most cases, the numbers have decreased.
Any other questions for Pat? All right, great. As you know, the new NYPD Transit Bureau Chief, Kathleen O'Reilly, has been in her new post for about the last 90 days. We thank her and her team for their daily partnership and hard work in keeping the system safe. Chief O'Reilly will be providing a short update today. Chief?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Pat. So year-end major crime fell 32%. Since the closing in May 6th, our crime dropped 52% for even greater reductions. Since we deployed more officers on the rails this past December, crime fell in every category. Robberies were down 36%, grand larcenies down 75%, felony assaults were down 14%, burglaries were down 100%. Our station house inspections were up 146%, our train runs were up 28%, and our train order maintenance sweeps were up 25%. The fact is that we are still battling the impression that crime is out of control in the subway, and this is not the case. We do have some high-profile, few vicious, isolated incidents, one this past Tuesday, an unprovoked act by a troubled individual who had no prior interactions with the NYPD. A troubled woman who was not on our radar as a threat to the public. These few vicious but isolated incidents don't represent the majority of the subway system. The fact remained that our cops were on the platform. Our officers acted quickly. They rendered aid and made an immediate apprehension, taking the suspect into custody. All our training and protocols played out as we expect. But the fact is this individual was not deterred by our officers' presence on the platform. This incident demonstrates how even the most robust police presence does not always prevent crime. In keeping with the MTA's #1 priority of safety, we at the NYPD remain laser focused on our efforts to protect the ridership. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'm going to turn to Bob Ferran, our Chief Financial Officer, for a brief update on MTA finances.
Thank you. We're still in the process of reconciling actual year-end results with the December financial plan forecast, and we're in the process of preparing the February plan, which revised the adopted budget. Now, changes to be reflected include the actual 2020 year imbalances, the difference between the $4.5 billion of federal aid that we had assumed and the $4 billion that we will receive, the estimated loss in fare income from the delay in the voting or an adoption of fare increases, the increased FEMA reimbursements, and the impact of the state budget and potential alternative actions based upon the level of federal aid received by the state. Now, again, as a reminder, we still face cumulative deficits of $11.4 billion in the 22 to 24 period. And even with service cuts and wage freezes that we do not want to do, but that we did have in the financial plan for 22 and 24, the cumulative deficit is still almost $8 billion. We'll provide a full summary at the February plan at the next board meeting. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. Any questions or comments from the board for Bob? Okay, great. Now I'm going to ask Jano Lieber to provide an update on C&D and Capital Program Oversight Committee. Jano. Sure. All right, so moving along, we'll come back to Jano. The minutes of the December joint meeting and minutes from each committee have been distributed to all members. Are there any corrections or omissions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Andrew.
Yes, so on the book today, on page 6, where you mentioned the public speakers, gentleman's last name is De Souza, not De Souza.
Thank you. We'll make that correction.
And one other, in the transit book on page 206, where the reference is made to updated capital programs, the station on the number 6 line should read East 149th Street, not 149th Street.
Thank you. We'll make both of those. Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, I want to raise the issue of why we still are consolidating all our committee meetings when we're entering this period where I think oversight is going to be really necessary. This sort of compressed joint board meeting and committees all in one doesn't provide much allowance for good fiduciary practices. All the other boards I'm on, admittedly much smaller, have reinstated committee meetings so that their board can actively engage in what's going on. So I'd like to press again, I know Bob Lynn has brought this up, that it's time now, when you've perfected remote meetings, that we go back to having the formal processes we had pre-COVID of having full committee discussions before it comes to the full board. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Jones.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Randy. Any other comments? Commissioner Khaleesi?
Yep, I'm with that as well.
Okay.
And Bob Lynn.
Thank you, Bob.
Can I also, let me make a couple of comments.
Sure.
This is, I believe, our 11th post-COVID monthly remote board meeting. And my sense is that, first, I want to comment that during this period, there's no question extraordinary work has been done by you, Pat, by all of the employees of the MTA, and I don't want to minimize that in any way. Critical issues were there. We were up against tremendous issues of employee illness. So I don't want to minimize the terrific work and the wonderful work in Washington to achieve federal assistance. But as we all know, there are some fundamentally important issues that we face. Fares, safety both of workforce and the public, fare evasion, debt service and the levels of debt service, procurement. There's clearly the newspaper reports on Kawasaki, and the reports on Kawasaki are in the R211 are fundamentally important. Service levels for the future are important. And I think that a process that doesn't have committee work just doesn't allow for the type of input and robust discussion that is required. Simply having quick conversations before press releases go out just doesn't allow for the discussion, the informed consent that's really necessary with our fiduciary obligations. So I really want to assert, as David said, I want to reassert, we need to get a process going that gives for a real give and take, real joint problem solving, real adoption of wise and reasoned decisions and plans. So I think of however it's done, the mechanics need to be put back in place. There are just too many months have gone by without that input, and I think we need to figure out a better way to go forward. Thank you.
Commissioners, I take the point. We will consider it and come back with a proposal as to how to address this given continuing COVID realities. But thanks for the comments. Jano, are you? All right. Yeah, thank you. We will make Andrew's comments. Any other corrections or omissions? There being none, I move to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second, Pat.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. At the start of each year, the committees put forth committee work plans for the coming year. These work plans have been distributed in the materials for today and are posted on the website for the public. Are there any corrections or comments? If not, I move to approve the work plans. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, David. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The work plans are approved. Next, I'm going to call on Phil Eng from the Long Island Railroad.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning, everyone. As we start a hopeful 2021, I'm thankful to report that the Long Island Railroad employees are beginning to receive vaccines as part of the MTA coordinated effort. This will ensure the continued health of our frontline heroes and the safety of their families and our customers. And I have to thank Dario Luisi and all of the OHS staff, along with the teams at Long Island Railroad, for everything they've done during the pandemic in helping to plan, coordinate, and advise every step of the way. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And another key person, part of my leadership team, who has stepped up in an acting role, perhaps during our most challenging year ever, is Rob Free. I'm pleased to announce that I've appointed him permanently to the vital position of Senior Vice President of Operations. Rob has shown leadership throughout his career at the railroad, where he started in 1992 as a station appearance maintainer, before steadily rising through the ranks, always willing to take on new roles and challenges, expanding his knowledge and experience. And over the past year, he has handled operations during this public health crisis seamlessly. And it shows through his workday in and out. He is genuine about the organization, the workforce, and the public. So please join me in congratulating him and knowing that we're lucky to have his expertise, not only leading the operation team, but successfully working collaboratively or across all of our functional teams. So just want to say thank you to Rob. So despite the ongoing pandemic, we completed a tremendous amount of work in 2020. To do this amount of work in any year is a great accomplishment, but to do it in the midst of a pandemic is even more remarkable. The efforts by our workforce and our management are being seen now in our on-time performance and will be felt by customers for many years to come. This wouldn't have been done without the efforts of the full team: transportation, planning, engineering, maintenance of equipment, the list goes on, working seamlessly towards a common goal of improving service for our riders and increasing safety for all. In addition to supporting the system improvement and expansion projects, our engineering department was performing work on the railroad state of good repair. This work ensures that the system we operate every day is not only safe and reliable for today, but for the foreseeable future. A number of installation records were broken as part of this work, which I'll get to. Every day, we ensure that this work is executed as safely as possible, while constantly looking for ways to minimize costs and achieve efficiencies, making available funding go further. I'd like to give a quick rundown of our accomplishments this year. For communications, 388 poles have been replaced. We installed more than 191,000 linear feet of fiber optic cable, more than 94,000 linear feet of copper cable, 126 new audiovisual platform sign control units, and 20 new public information office operator consoles. These are used to support customer communications like station announcement and improved messaging on new colored digital signs in our stations. 150 fiber optic network nodes to modernize and upgrade obsolete equipment. 32 media converters to install to support signal supervisory for Queens, Nassau, Jamaica, and Atlantic terminals. For our signals, we replaced 31 crossing gate mechanisms and 22 switch mechanisms that control switches and movement of trains. And for power, we replaced 4 generators necessary to convert commercial power for use in our signal system, 9 traction power transformers, 1 substation in Freeport, 135,000 linear feet of third rail protection board, 22,000 linear feet of third rail, 12 power poles, 48 cross arms, and we added redundant traction power to critical electrically operated switches in Long Island City. And for structures, we installed 6 bridge strike monitoring systems and completed 7 bridge repair projects, 15 platform repair projects, and 7 station building improvement projects. And track, 7 turnouts, nearly 35,000 hand ties. We replaced nearly 9,000 linear feet of switch timber, surfaced more than 677,000 linear feet of track, completed more than 1,700 field welds. And I mentioned before, we installed 287,000 continuous linear feet of continuous welded rail. That's a modern Long Island Railroad modern day record, and 73,244 concrete ties, another Long Island Railroad record, shattering the previous record of 42,000 ties in 2001. And those 2 are prime examples of us getting more done while being more efficient. And through coordination with all of the operating support departments, engineering was able to complete work at a lower cost than similar previous work in the past. And one example is the replacement of the wood ties with concrete ties and new rail on Port Washington branch between Harold and Shea. In the past, those projects would have been completed on weekends, which requires significant amounts of overtime and a longer overall duration. By taking the track out of service around the clock, we're able to complete work during the work days under continuous outages, eliminating repetitive mobilization with our labor force primarily working at straight time rates. This efficient method of work resulted in a 25% cost savings, allowing additional monies to be available for other state of good repair work being accomplished without increasing the overall budget. And this all leads to better and more reliable service for the public. So for the month of December, we exceeded our monthly on-time performance goals, hitting 95.6%. And for 2020 as a whole, our entire system collectively operated at 95.9% for the year, exceeding our goal of 94%. This represents an increase of 3.5 percentage points over 2019. And I'll add, for the year, we exceeded our goal on all 11 branches as well. I'm proud that we are continuously improving and have been able to provide safe, reliable service to our customers who needed us during this pandemic, and for being a vital source of transportation to medical workers and other frontline employees. To put it in perspective, compared to 2019, we saw in 2020, total engineering delays were down 36%. Signal delays were down 21%. Track circuit delays were down 35%. Switch delays were down 23%, and power delays 40%, track delays 55%, broken rail delays down 59%, switch trouble delays down 75%. Again, I have to thank the entire Long Island Railroad workforce and our management for making 2020 a successful year despite the difficulties, the challenges, and the pain of the ongoing pandemic. And looking forward to an even better 2021 as the vaccination program is underway. Better days are within sight. Let's stay vigilant, not let our guards down. Thank everyone for wearing your masks and protecting one another. On the note of safety, I'd like to also say, while we weren't able to gather as we normally do, I'd like to take this opportunity and thank and congratulate our employees who are recipients of our annual safety awards. The safety awards recognize employees who performed above and beyond the call of duty by intervening in such matters such as suicide attempts, rescuing people from tracks, and other heroic efforts. I'm grateful to these employees who have shown their care for others through their actions. They are not just heroes among us, but they're angels among us. We're all better and safer because of them. None of this could be possible if not for everyone working together as a team, battling the pandemic, delivering service, performing vital work, and building for the future. As we've all truly been all hands on deck for each other. Thank you to the public, our employees, our labor leaders for their partnership in helping us continue the best railroad Long Island has ever seen. Pat, there's no procurements this month, but there's one action item. Should I go to that, or do you want to ask for comments first?
No, let's do that, Phil, and then before we vote on it, I'll ask for board questions.
Thank you. As part of the Long Island Railroad expansion project, a new 667 space parking garage was constructed on the north side of the Westbury Station on a village property of Westbury owned surface lot. The state-of-the-art 4-level ungated garage is expected to open in March 2021. We entered a lease agreement with the village, and 367 spaces will be available for village permit holders. Long Island will use all pro parking to maintain and operate the garage. We seek board approval to establish parking fees for 300 unrestricted daily parking spaces located in this new constructed garage. The proposed daily rates will be the same as we charge at our Mineola Intermodal Center. Monday to Friday for up to 20 hours, $6. 20 to 24 hours, $12. There's more information on page 36 of the book.
Thank you, Phil. Any questions on Phil's presentation or this one action item? All right, good. I'm going to make a motion to approve the action. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. I'm going to go back to Jano for an update on C&D and Capital Program Oversight Committee. Jano.
With apologies to the board for the technical glitch, I'll catch us up on capital program issues and Capital Program Oversight Committee. The image you're seeing is the new entrance to Penn Station at 7th Avenue and 33rd Street that was opened in tandem with the unveiling of Moynihan Train Hall on New Year's Eve. If you haven't been there yet, it's really worth a visit. It restores Penn Station's presence on 7th Avenue, which we've all missed for generations. And it provides instant orientation to people emerging from the catacombs of existing Penn Station because the view, as you can see in the image, is of the Empire State Building right as you get out. This project is the first phase of the East End Gateway project that's going to dramatically improve the Long Island Railroad 33rd Street concourse in existing Penn Station, making it wider, increasing the ceiling heights all the way across to roughly 20 feet, upgrading the retail and creating a much better pedestrian environment. That's going to be finished in late 22, early 23. But of course, this phase, the widening of the Long Island Railroad concourse corridor, is only one part of Governor Cuomo's very ambitious plan to rebuild and expand Penn Station, which is a mega project that will benefit the users of all three of our MTA railroads. New York City Transit, which puts 300,000 people through Penn Station every day, Long Island Railroad, and eventually after Penn Access is completed, Metro North as well. But East End Gateway, 33rd Street entrance was just one of the many objectives we accomplished in 2020. Overall, we were able to complete, despite the pandemic, $4.3 billion worth of the roughly $5 billion worth of completions that originally were planned at the outset of 2020. Phil made reference to the Long Island Railroad expansion project. We made huge progress in the past year on that, including the elimination of 5 more grade crossings, the completion of the Mid-Suffolk train yard, 3 station enhancement, and many other milestones. The Canarsie L train project, which I know everybody's aware of, was another major highlight, which was completed 5 months early and saved the MTA over $100 million. Of course, one of the things we're proudest of is the completion of ADA projects at 11 stations, which I think is the most in a single year ever. And all of those are out, open, and fully accessible to the public. With regard to contract awards, which is another measure of capital program progress, You may remember that at the outset of 2020, we announced that we were intending to award $13+ billion worth of projects in the first year of the historic MTA 2020 to 24 capital program. Of course, the capital program was put on hold in March, but thanks to close collaboration with Bob Ferran and his team, and by using a funding strategy in collaboration with Bob that focused on 3 categories of projects: use it or lose it, federal money funded projects, projects that were already underway. We wanted to make sure we didn't disrupt those and increase the cost of those, and also in-house work, a lot of which Phil Eng was describing just now. We ended up being able to award a total of $5.4 billion. Again, that was a significant accomplishment considering the financial pressure that MTA has been placed under by the COVID-19 pandemic. One of the keys to this successful year was the Accelerations program, which you may recall we undertook in the spring at Governor Cuomo's request. Early on in the pandemic, we identified $2 billion worth of projects that were either already underway and could be accelerated, or which we could get going quickly, all of which was intended to take advantage of the lower ridership during the pandemic, and that has paid off. Looking forward, we're hopeful that in light of the governor's remarks in the past week and the Biden administration's $20 billion commitment to transit as part of their recently unveiled rescue program, that we will be able to get back, move in the direction of resuming delivery of the capital plan as ambitiously and as big as was adopted by this board just a year ago. But until more federal aid comes and until central business district tolling is approved, which will have a huge benefit to the capital program, until those things happen, the capital program still is operating with serious constraints. Even with those constraints, we should be able to tackle our most critical and urgent capital priorities for 2021. First and foremost, state of good repair projects. For example, the structural repairs to the Grand Central train shed and other structural work that is obviously necessary to keep the system functioning. But we also want to keep pushing forward on priorities like ADA and resignaling, and we are doing so in the context even of the constrained capital program that we're operating under. And if and when more capital funding does become available, whether it's because the emergency aid that we've asked for from Congress comes through, or hopefully a stimulus package and greenlighting of central business district tolling, when those things happen, we want to be ready. So we are moving very aggressively to take projects and move them as close to the starting line as possible so that we'll be able to accelerate construction once the resources do become available. You see on the screen some of the priorities that are shaping our thinking as we go forward this year. Finally, this month's focus in the CPOC committee materials is rolling stock procurement. And as I say, the board book includes materials that describe the process that C&D and New York City Transit and the other operating agencies have been going through together to adjust the capital plan to reflect the current funding envelope and projections for reduced ridership post-COVID. In tandem with COO Mario Pollock and Kavesh Ayer, our Chief Procurement Officer, we're trying to shape a strategy for breaking the feast or famine pattern of car procurements that the MTA has engaged in over the years. If we could sustain a more stable and regular flow of orders, that would help manufacturers keep facilities open during, in between procurements or over time, rather than these huge peaks and valleys. And that would reduce their costs and, we hope, create opportunities to increase competition. So the slight delay, attributable mostly to COVID and projections of reduced ridership, is giving us the opportunity to rethink and retool our car procurement strategy. It's less true of buses, but it is especially acute in the Carr area. So I just want to acknowledge the leadership of Mayor Pelican and our Chief Procurement Officer, Kavesh Ayer, in that area. And obviously, we and the IEC are available to answer any questions. Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Jano. Any questions for Jano?
It's not a question, Jano, but on your first slide, you probably want to update the spelling of Verrazano since everybody's using 2 Z's now.
Roger.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Kathy Rinaldi on Metro North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. As we've already discussed this morning, the new year started with some great news in our fight against the COVID-19 virus. We welcomed the state's expansion of the vaccine distribution last week to include Metro North workers, and we thank Governor Cuomo for his leadership for giving priority to our heroic frontline employees. Metro North frontline employees are now rolling up their sleeves to receive shots at the Javits Center, and we look forward to expansion of the vaccination program to all of our employees. We continue to offer all employees COVID testing as well, as we remain focused on the safety of our customers and our employees. Looking back at last year's performance measures, our dedicated Metro North workforce was able to deliver on our promise to set the standard for safety, reliability, and innovation in the delivery of excellent customer service. I could not be prouder of each and every Metro North employee who helped us accomplish goals that we set at the inception of Way Ahead while dealing with the unforeseen challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic. We not only achieved many of our goals, but we performed above many of those goals and we set records. While safety always remains our top priority, our on-time performance last year was a record high 97.9%, surpassing the previous record set in 2009 and 3.5% above our 2019 performance. This achievement was due in large part to the record performance on the New Haven line of 97.8%. The Hudson line also performed well at 98.2%, and the Harlem line stood at 97.8%. Our west of Hudson service was also much improved at 94.4% for 2020. Our trains also traveled more miles before causing a train delay, a huge improvement over 2019 and a record high for train reliability. Overall fleet reliability in 2020 achieved a record 278,951 miles before a train broke down, with each class of train equipment performing above goal for the year. These are impressive achievements for our amazing employees who are in the system 24/7, supporting and providing safe and reliable service. We continue to provide a reduced schedule with operations at 63% of our pre-pandemic service levels to accommodate our essential workers who make up our core ridership right now. As was the case with Long Island Railroad, as Phil just reported, this reduced schedule has also allowed for critical work to be performed around the railroad by our forces in bringing our infrastructure up to a state of good repair. As you can see in this agenda's track program quarterly update, the numbers speak for themselves. Last year, our crews were hard at work, installing more than 49,700 new cross ties, which was 146% above our goal, replacing 36 new switches, 109% of our goal, installing almost 10 miles of continually welded rail, which was 137% above goal, surfacing 95 miles of track, 105% of our goal, welding over 1,600 joints, replacing 1,641 bridge timbers and 6 grade crossing pads, and covering 1,770 track miles with ultrasonic testing of our rail. While operating a reduced schedule, we expanded our Smart Track program, which allows crews to undertake critical infrastructure work by strategically shutting down continuous segments of track. This gives multiple work groups extended and uninterrupted access to maintain and improve our system. As a result, we were able to expedite and replace 4 track switches at a critical interlocking directly south of the Scarsdale station in less time than originally planned, resulting in less impact to our customers and train service while improving the overall reliability of the Harlem line service. Our crews also installed 27 miles of communications and signal cable for the Waterbury Cab Signal project. Crews rehabilitated 3 platform tracks in Grand Central Terminal, and the exceptional efforts of our track department led to a considerable reduction in FRA and track maintenance exceptions. We also included new miter and expansion rails on the Harlem River Lift Bridge, made several repairs to overhead and undergrade bridges, began an extensive tree trimming program around the overhead power lines, and installed 1,250 feet of fencing while removing tie stubs, debris, and garbage at several locations along our tracks. These proactive maintenance measures are paying dividends with record high service delivery at 97.9% and a reduction of 68% in train delays last year caused by switch and signal issues. That reduction is from 1,750 in 2019 down to only 566 last year. These record performance metrics are a direct result of the hard work of our entire Metro-North team, who come together every day to ensure that our customers receive the safe and reliable service that they deserve. As COVID vaccinations continue and the pandemic recedes, it's Metro-North's unwavering commitment to the safety of our customers and the reliability of our service that will continue to bring our customers back to the railroad. Just a brief update on PTC. Metro-North Railroad has successfully achieved all PTC requirements to meet the December 31st, 2020 FRA deadline, with more than 165,000 revenue trains running in PTC mode, including Amtrak and freight trains. This year, Metro-North is looking to make PTC operational improvements throughout the territory and in partnership with Connecticut DOT to complete the signal and PTC installations on the Waterbury branch. Our track safety poster contest winners, as part of raising awareness on the importance of rail safety, Metro-North's Tracks public outreach program launched a rail safety poster contest in 2018. We kicked off the third annual contest last fall, encouraging students pre-K through 12th grade who live or attend schools within our territory to participate. Students were asked to illustrate what they know and believe are most important about rail safety, and we had an overwhelming response as the track team received a record 169 student poster entries. The entries were divided into 4 groups for the judging process: pre-K, K through 3rd, 4th through 8th, and 9th through 12th grades. The posters were then evaluated based on the best representation of safety around tracks and trains at their grade levels. I'm pleased to announce the contest winners selected by class category are as follows: Karen Wexler, who's the pre-K winner from Brooklyn, New York. For kindergarten through 3rd grade, Gabrielle Garofalo of St. Barnabas Elementary School in the Bronx. 4th grade through 8th grade, Halima Kappa Zafin Drama Havita from Dobbs Ferry Middle School in Westchester County. And finally, for 9th grade through 12th grade, the winner is Celia Maranzino from Saunders Trades and Technical School in Yonkers. The 4 winning posters will be featured in our tracks presentations throughout this year. We congratulate all the winners as well as those who participated in the contest, which is a creative way to amplify our safety message and help keep all the children who live in our railroad territory out of harm's way. Earlier this month, I joined state and local officials to open the Maybrook Trailway, a 23-mile segment of the Greater Empire State Trail in Dutchess and Putnam counties. This segment was built by Metro-North with $42 million in state funds. The trail runs alongside the Metro-North Beacon Line. The Maybrook Trailway is a vital link in the Empire State Trail, which was launched by Governor Cuomo as the longest state bike and walking pathway in the nation, spanning 750 miles from New York City to Canada and from Albany to Buffalo, and completed at the end of December. This project ensures that outdoor enthusiasts will be able to enjoy the trailway for decades to come. Metro-North is proud to have played a role in the creation of this trailway. Healthy, socially distanced outdoor recreation never seemed more important than it does right now. Finally, on appointments, as we prepare for the upcoming retirement of John Kesich, our SVP of Operations, Justin Bonashek has been promoted to the position and will shadow John throughout the first quarter. Justin joined Metro-North in 2016 as Vice President, Office of System Safety, and brings more than 15 years of experience in commuter rail operations to his new role. Finally, there is one competitive procurement in this month's agenda package. Metro-North Railroad hereby requests board approval to use the competitive RFP process for the solicitation of maintenance, inspection, and repair services for a total of 53 escalators for Metro-North and Long Island Railroad. I submit this procurement for board approval.
Thank you, Kathy. Before we get to the procurement, any questions for Kathy? All right, I'll make a motion to approve the procurement. Do I have a second?
I second, Pat.
Thank you, Hada. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. The procurement carries. Sarah, please, New York City Transit and MTA bus.
Thanks, Pat. I'll just make a couple of comments. First, always sad to have to announce that additional employees have passed away due to COVID. So I just want to thank our family liaison team once again for their vigilant and constant communication and outreach to these families to make sure that they have a partner as they make their way through next steps, which are painful and difficult. I also wanted to thank the team that responded to the bus incident last week, a week ago today. Obviously a tragic and scary incident. We're grateful no one was killed, but our thoughts are with all of those who were injured. Like the other agency presidents, I just want to take a minute to speak on vaccines. Grateful to the governor's efforts and the state efforts to make sure that essential workers and transit workers are prioritized, which is making a world of difference for us. And grateful to Pat Warren and his team and the OHS team for setting up and executing on the vaccines. We have more demand than we have vaccine right now, but we know that help is on the way from the federal and the state government. So we're grateful for that. Like others, just a couple of comments about our achievements last year. In the interest of time, I won't go into everything, but I think after this meeting, I'll share with the board an email I sent to all of our employees about a week ago, just going through all of the accomplishments of 2020 and thanking them for their efforts. I'll share that with all of you, which might be the best use of time now. But just a few highlights. New York City Transits has showed continued performance improvements on-time performance. Our on-time performance in 2020 was 88.6%, which is the highest in recent history. Obviously, we know that part of that is due to ridership being low, and we're anxious for riders to come back. But nevertheless, it's obviously good news for our customer base, which is the vast majority of whom are essential workers at this moment. Contributing also to improved performance were the infrastructure investments we made over the last year, including the replacement of more than 900 mechanical signal timers with digital units to improve reliability. This is a project that I met with the governor and his staff on before I took this role. And so it's been one that the state has been focused on and that we've been focused on, and to complete those timers, to complete the installation of those timers is a huge achievement. Crews also completed work on about 22,000 feet of track and 32 switches, including key switches at Union Square on the 4, 5, 6 lines. Customer journey time performance also improved compared to the prior year, reaching nearly 86% in 2020. This is the strongest measure of customer experience because it includes both wait times and travel time compared to the schedule. On buses, additional travel time, the estimated average extra time customers are on board compared to scheduled onboard time decreased by 46 seconds on a 12-month average basis. Customer journey time performance increased by 5 percentage points to 77% over the last year. Contributing to improved performance for buses was New York City DOT's addition of more than 16 miles of bus lanes and busways that were installed in 2020. The J Street Busway, 149th Street bus lane, El Grant Highway bus lane, 14th Street bus lane, Merrick Boulevard bus lane, Highland Boulevard bus lane, and the installation of a busway on Main Street in Flushing, Queens. So again, I'm grateful to all the teams for their work in improving year-over-year performance. And finally, I just wanted to acknowledge 2 significant retirements at New York City Transit. John Santa Maria, who is our VP of Car Equipment, retired about 2 weeks ago. He had been with New York City Transit for many years, and we're grateful for his service. And Frank Giesecke, acting SVP of Subways and VP of Subway Operations, retires this week after 36 years of service. He actually joined Transit as part of a program with his high school, his senior year in high school. And so unbelievably lucky to have had 36 years of service from him. And then I'll move on to procurements. The New York City Transit procurement package includes 2 items for an estimated amount of $59.2 million. The first is a 5-year estimated quantity miscellaneous service contract in the estimated amount of $59.2 million with Thales Transport and Security to provide maintenance and engineering support services for various New York City Transit signaling systems designed and provided by Thales, including the Flushing Line CBTC system. The systems to be supported under this contract are critical to New York City Transit subway operation, and Thales is the original equipment manufacturer and is the sole source to maintain its proprietary systems. The contract includes ongoing maintenance services as well as provision for additional services on an as-needed basis for both MTA Information Technology and New York City Transit subways in support of these systems. The second is an authorizing resolution requesting permission to utilize the RFP process for the procurement of 50 low-floor, 40-foot buses for MTA Bus Company with an option for 85 additional buses. New York City Transit will conduct this federally funded procurement of these buses on behalf of MTA BC. These buses will replace aging buses that have reached the end of their 12-year useful life and will operate out of MTA BC depots in Queens. Use of the competitive RFP process allows New York City Transit to evaluate not only price, but technical and commercial factors, including delivery. I submit these items for board approval and happy to take any questions.
Let's start with questions for Sarah.
I have one, Pat.
Andrew.
Yeah, Sarah, I thought we were trying to emphasize that we're purchasing all electric buses, but these are continuing to be hybrids, are these, or just diesel buses?
Yep, these are diesel. Let me let Craig take the question.
Isn't it diesel hybrid?
Sure. These buses are left over from the 15 to 19 capital plan. Again, looking at the current 2024 plan, which is currently on pause, we did have programmed in there 500 all-electric buses. But again, we're continuing to buy a mix of propulsion types, hybrids, diesels, as well as electrics as we look ahead. We'll only buy electrics from 2029 and beyond.
I got it. Thank you.
Surely.
Good. Anybody else? Then I'll make a motion to approve the procurements. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Right.
Any opposed or abstentions? All right, thank you. Next, I'm going to turn to Jano, who has C&D procurement items from the Transit and Joint Railroad Committees. Jano.
Thanks, Pat. Construction Development has 2 procurement actions brought through the Joint Railroad Committee for approval this month, totaling $3.9 million. There are no non-competitive items. The first item requests board approval to award a contract modification to the East Side Access Traction Power Systems contract with EJ Electric to furnish and install approximately 9,500 feet of 500 MCM stray current drainage grounding cable for 2 traction power substations in the amount of $1.5 million. The cable is needed to protect adjacent structures from stray electrical current. The second item requests board ratification of a modification to the East Side Access Systems contract with Tudor Perini for changes to the Building Management Fire Command Center and Fire Detection/Suppression systems, and that one is in the amount of $2.4 million. The original East Side Access design provided for separate fire command centers for the new Long Island Railroad terminal. Subsequently, Metro North and Long Island Railroad have decided to consolidate their fire command centers, and this will enable that and enable having a single joint center for all of Grand Central. And these revisions will also address design errors and omissions that were identified with these systems as the process has unfolded. Recovery of the increased costs resulting from those design errors and omissions associated with these items are being pursued against the general engineering consultant. You're accustomed to hearing me say that. We have an ongoing, I never clarified this, we have an ongoing claims process against the insurers of the design contract. This is not unconventional for a mega project, but we pursue it very aggressively. So in summary, I submit these procurement actions to the board for approval.
Thanks, Jano. Any questions for Jano? I'll make the motion to approve these procurements. Do I have a second?
Second.
Good. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The procurements carry. Jeno, back to you.
One more. C&D has one procurement action being brought through the Transit and Bus Committee for approval this month. The item requests board ratification of a modification to a contract with LK Comstock for the renewal and rehabilitation of a central substation at West 53rd Street in Manhattan. This mod, in the amount of $3.58 million, will accelerate the repair of existing duct banks and replacement of positive feeder cables located between the central substation and the 51st Street circuit breaker house on the 6th Avenue line. The existing positive feeder cables are approximately 60 years old, and it has recently come to our attention that they are in a seriously deteriorated condition. Given the condition of those cables and the duct banks, it's prudent now to accelerate this work and replace the cables now. As it happens, Comstock has not only the necessary experience, but they're currently performing not dissimilar work in an area in close proximity. So accelerating the work under this contract will allow to expedite completion of the work and also mitigate a risk of inconvenience to passengers from a failure resulting from the deterioration that I referenced. I submit the procurement action to the board for your approval.
Good. I will make a motion to approve this procurement. Any questions before I ask for a second? Second?
Second, Pat.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. The procurement carries. Thank you, Jano. Danny, Bridges and Tunnels, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As has been noted, as we look forward to 2021, we hope for better days ahead with the beginning of the COVID-19 vaccine distribution. We are still, however, in a state of emergency, and I'm proud of our Mta Workforce remaining vigilant and continuing with prevention measures we know are proven to stop the spread of the virus. These measures include taking advantage of regular on-site COVID-19 screenings and following robust safety practices. With the pandemic restraints always in play, I would also like to acknowledge the tremendous effort of the B&T team before, during, and after our winter storm of the season, just before Christmas. This winter weather event dropped more snow on our facilities in one night than throughout all of last season. I want to praise our employees who worked to keep our roadways clear and our businesses running before and during the storm, while keeping one another as safe as possible during the pandemic. On an operations note, while below pre-pandemic levels, paid vehicle crossings at B&T facilities in 2020 as compared to 2019 were approximately at 77%. For November 2020, our traffic volume was at 81% when compared to 2019, and preliminary numbers for December when compared to 2019 were about 80%. Although our traffic has rebounded with a high in October of approximately 87% when compared to October of 2019, our collisions and collisions with injuries have greatly declined. Collisions were down 50% for the year, and collisions with injuries were down more than 37%. So in addition to the reduced traffic, I credit this to the many engineering safety improvements throughout the year at our bridges and tunnels by C&D and our engineering team, and the employees at the facilities that are out there every day ensuring safe travels for our customers. Finally, Mr. Chairman, there are no B&T board procurements for this month, and this concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Danny. Any questions for Danny? All right, terrific. Thank you. We're going to go slightly out of order. We'll come back to the Finance Committee matters in a minute, but I'm going to ask Michelle Woods to address the Audit Committee items. Michelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is one change to the audit work plan. The information technology report will be presented at the May Audit Committee meeting. We have 6 remaining items on the work plan to require a vote. The first of these is the third quarter 2020 financial statements, which have been uploaded into Director's desk. Jill Strohmeyer from Deloitte and Noemi Lopez, the acting MTA Controller, are available to answer any questions.
Any questions for Deloitte or the MTA Controller from anybody on the board? All right, good. Then do I have a motion from a member of the Audit Committee to accept the third quarter financial statements?
I motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. This vote is for members of the Audit Committee only. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. Michelle.
The second item is a brief status update of the 2020 audit plan and a summary of the proposed 2021 audit plan.
Any questions regarding the 2020 update or the proposed 2021 audit plan?
I got to do the presentation.
You got a presentation?
Yeah,
Okay.
quick. It's quick. During the year, we completed 79 of 104 planned operational audits, and 36 audits are in progress. The audits identified 165 findings with recommendations to improve internal controls and compliance with established processes while reducing risk. We identified potential cost savings and efficiency opportunities of $12.5 million with these audits. We also performed 278 audits related to capital projects. This work included reviews of cost proposals, interim reviews, closeout audits, and audits of claims to ensure contract billings were appropriate. Third-party question costs were $69.7 million. Our past experience has demonstrated an 80% recovery rate for question costs. In coordination with the MTIG's office, we have continued our integrity monitoring work on the Superstorm Sandy program. We have updated the integrity monitoring plan and provided the revised plan to the FTA for review and comment. As required by the grant funding agreement, we will continue to perform audits of all ongoing Sandy projects. Our pension QA group has reviewed over 1,400 pension calculations this year. They've identified 253 errors during this process, which were corrected by the pension staff prior to payments being made. This has a financial impact of approximately $4.1 million. The onboard observations performed by my team were put on hold from March 17th through June 30th due to changes in revenue collection caused by the pandemic. Observations resumed in July to ensure the conductors were collecting the correct fare and were in compliance with the operating procedures. The onboard team performed over 3,000 tests at both Long Island Railroad and Metro North this year. The results of these tests were reported to agency management, who estimate the rate of fare not collected and improper fare collection. The information from observations are also given to management so that they can have the opportunity to adjust resources where needed. Now I'll provide a brief summary of the proposed 2021 audit plan, which has been discussed with each of the agency presidents and the MTA tower leads. The foundation of the audit plan was developed through a formal risk assessment that is performed in accordance with the Institute of Internal Auditor standards. We began our planning process in September, and it takes us several months to complete, resulting in a comprehensive risk assessment which is fully documented. Consistent with prior years, the risk assessment sources included financial data, an assessment of the nature of operations, control activities, and previous audit results. We conducted 87 management interviews within the agencies and identified 151 potential audits. We prioritized the audit suggestions and developed a proposed audit plan with 97 operational and assurance audits for 2021. I met with the agency presidents to discuss and finalize the proposed plan and made adjustments as needed to ensure the areas of greatest risk will have appropriate audit coverage. This is a snapshot of where the 97 audits included in the plan fall under each of the business functions. Within service delivery, we will ensure management continues to inspect and maintain their systems in a state of good repair. In finance, we will closely monitor actions taken by management related to timekeeping systems, as well as oversight and assignment of overtime. For safety, we will perform audits of initiatives such as the COVID cleaning, fare evasion task force, homeless outreach, drug testing, and hazardous waste management. In human resources, we will focus on medical benefits, as well as employee availability, and will perform revenue audits at each agency. In addition to our third-party reviews of capital contracts, we will continue with our Sandy program and the New York City Engineering Audit Office reviews. Our procurement audits will continue to ensure we spend our resources effectively and efficiently and in accordance with the contract terms and conditions. Finally, our technology audits will support the consolidated organization and cover areas such as change management and cybersecurity. This is a visual representation of how the resources associated with our assurance audits will be allocated during the year. The MTA headquarters resource allocation is higher than previous years. This is primarily due to the increase of consolidated functions, including technology, which will cover all agencies. This is a representation of how the resources associated with our audit staff will be allocated. I believe we have met the challenge to provide a balance of audit coverage for the MTA and each of its agencies. With 8 additional resignations and retirements this year, our current headcount is 52. I've discussed the level of staffing needed to complete the proposed plan with the chairman and requested approval to hire from the Vacancy Control Committee to maintain our budgeted staffing level of 60, which is a 30% reduction from prior years. I believe our approved staffing level is appropriate to address the areas of risk we have identified for the 2021 plan and to complete the plan, including the support functions that are required by management. In 2021, we will focus our efforts to support transformation initiatives of the MTA to improve efficiency and effectiveness of operations. We will also support agency-wide goals with respect to timekeeping and overtime and evaluate contractor performance. Finally, we will continue to coordinate the audit activities with various external audit entities, and will work with the internal control staff to ensure that all recommendations are effectively implemented. This concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Now I'll ask for questions regarding the 2020 update or the proposed 2021 audit plan for Michelle.
Yeah, Pat?
Norman.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Michelle, what sort of data have you developed to determine the extent of the saturation of homeless people in the systems?
So the audits that we do of the homeless plan, we look at the statistics that both our in-house group does, as well as the consultants that they work with. So the audit department doesn't establish rates of homelessness, but we do look at the data that other groups put together.
Any other questions for Michelle? All right, then I'll ask for a motion from a member of the audit committee to approve the proposed 2021 audit plan.
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Barbas. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Audit committee members? Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? The 2021 audit plan is approved. Michelle?
The remaining information items are as follows. The MTA Enterprise Risk Management and Internal Control Guidelines were adopted by the board in 2011 pursuant to a Public Authority Law Section 2931. They are required to be reviewed by the committee annually and are contained in your committee book. Corporate Compliance is not recommending any changes at this time. The MTA Chief Compliance Officer has also provided a status report on the Enterprise Risk Management Program and the MTA's compliance with the Internal Control Act. In addition, the MTA Chief Compliance Officer and agency internal control staff have provided a report to the committee on the status of audit recommendations previously accepted by the respective agencies. Lamont Kearse, the MTA Chief Compliance Officer, is available to answer any questions. Finally, Michael Garner and the MTA Chief Diversity Officer has provided an update on the performance measures and compliance monitoring used by the Department of Diversity and Civil Rights in tracking critical tasks. Michael is also available to answer any questions. This concludes the audit update.
Michelle, thanks. So any questions for Michelle, Lamont Kearse, or Michael Gardner on any of these matters? All right, good. Michelle, thanks for the update. Let's turn back to the Finance Committee, and I'll ask Pat McCoy.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to point out that in the Finance Committee exhibit book, appearing on page 20 of that document, is our 2020 year-end report on financing activities. This is a 19-page report that summarizes our extensive activity in 2020 in the capital markets, $8.9 billion in new money borrowing and bond issuance, and that includes our MLF issuance, $1.23 billion in refunding bonds, and $326 million in remarketing obligations. And with that, I would just be happy to take any questions that the commissioners might have about the report.
Any questions for Pat McCoy on financing matters? All right, good. Next, I'm going to turn to Chief Procurement Officer Kavesh Iyer, who will introduce the procurement item. Kavesh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. MTA headquarters has one competitive procurement action totaling $4,026,393. It's an award to LB Technology to implement and support an automated vehicle location monitoring system for non-revenue vehicles across all agencies. There are no non-competitive actions or no ratifications proposed this month. This concludes headquarters procurements. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Kavesh, thank you. Any questions for Kavesh? Randy?
Don't we already have something similar anywhere?
Yes, we do, Commissioner. But what we are doing is this was an all agency across the board procurement, which is upgrading the systems and technology. The ones that we had were old technology. This is improved, and we also have managed to incur savings across the board of close on to $1.8 million.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kavesh? Then I'll make a motion to approve the action. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? The action carries. I'll call on David Florio to introduce the real estate items, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real estate has 3 action items for consideration and approval, all of them with MTA Metro Railroad. The first is a lease with Swarovski Retail Ventures for retail space on the main concourse in Grand Central Terminal. The second item is a lease with Hudson Group Retail, also for a retail travel convenience retail use, also on the main concourse at Grand Central. The third item is a license agreement with the San Marco Stone and Supply for use of vacant land for non-commuter parking and building equipment storage in New Rochelle. I do note, Mr. Chairman, there is a typo in that staff summary. It notes a board meeting of January 2020. That will be corrected for the record. In addition, there are 5 information items, and we're happy to answer any questions regarding any of the foregoing.
Thank you, Andrew. I hope you won't object to that correction being made prior to your comment.
Not in the least.
Good, thank
I
you.
do know, Mr. Chairman, there is one of the information items. Okay, 5 information items. Got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Any questions for David? I'll make a motion to approve the real estate items. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed or abstentions? All right, good. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just want to note 2 things. The United States Department of Transportation put out a press release earlier. I mentioned, obviously, we all are aware of Polly Trottenberg's appointment and that of Subesh Iyer, our colleague here. There are 2 other appointments I just want to mention. One is that the appointment of Nuria Fernandez as Deputy Administrator of the FTA. Nuria has a distinguished career in transportation. She's currently the chair of APTA. She serves as CEO of Santa Clara County Valley Transportation Authority, and in her past, she was a senior leader here at the MTA. Her appointment Nuria is exceptionally qualified and able, and that's a terrific appointment. And one last from the region is Diana Lopez, who's been appointed as senior advisor for the to the administrator at FRA. Diana and I were colleagues together at the Port Authority in Skadden Arps. She also worked on the Gateway project, and that is also an appointment that I think will serve FRA and US DOT well. With that, unless there's any other business, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. I'll make the motion. Second. All in favor? Thank you. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Adjourned. Thank you all. All right, good. 2020 was a horrific year by any measure for city, state, nation, MTA, basically everybody. In the midst of that, the MTA people did extraordinary things. Our workforce, essential workers, every one of them continued to carry fellow essential workers, first responders throughout the entire pandemic. And you heard reports from my agency colleagues, Phil Eng, Kathy Rinaldi, Danny DiCrescenzo, Craig Cipriani, and Sarah Feinberg, as well as Jano Lieber, as to things that were done on both the capital and the operating side. We begin the year with a lot of hope. The inauguration of the president-elect and his call for unity, obviously his call also for substantial funding of Americans affected by the pandemic, but also investments on the operating and the capital side in public transit. The year ended in December with the passage of the lame duck COVID relief bill, which will provide $4 billion to cover almost all of the deficit in 2021. That's a good thing. And obviously the rollout of vaccination. Pat Warren reported that 1,300 of our frontline employees have been vaccinated. We got a message today from former strap hanger and the most trusted person in America, Dr. Fauci, about the importance of our workforce and everybody else getting vaccinated. That is extraordinarily important. And with that, we'll take your questions.
And a reminder, if you use the hand-raised feature, we'll know that you're looking to speak with Pat. And the first up today is Michelle Caskey of Bloomberg. Michelle.
Hey, thank you for this presser. So what we're wondering here is there's been a lot of talk of how the MTA potentially could get less money from the state. Cuomo has warned about needing to implement some really big spending cuts if the state doesn't get as much federal funding as it's hoping for. So basically, what's sort of the worst case scenario for MTA? How much money could the state divert away from the MTA or give less in aid? Today,
Michelle,
Reinvent Albany was estimating. I'm sorry, Reinvent Albany was estimating roughly about 600 million. Do you guys agree with that estimate? Or?
Yeah, look, Michelle, I'm not going to speculate on that. The governor and the budget director were, I think, clear in their presentations earlier in the week about the worst case and the better case scenario in terms of federal funding and the effect it would have on state funding of school districts, municipalities, and agencies like the MTA. Obviously, the state's ability to fund all of those entities, including the MTA, will be dependent in large part in this year and the years to follow on the amount of federal aid. Not going to speculate on that, but obviously in close coordination and communication with the state and the budget director.
Thank you.
And next up is Dan Rivoli of New York. Dan.
Good afternoon. Correct me if I'm wrong, there's no immediate replacement for Frank Giesecke, who was the acting Subways chief, and he himself was a temporary replacement for Sally Librera, and the New York City Transit's chief operating officer is acting and pulling double duty as the MTA chief safety officer, and it's been a year since Andy Byford left New York City Transit, and there is no permanent head. Why is that? What's your plan to fill the senior ranks of New York City Transit leadership? And what impact is that having on decision-making, strategy, and implementing that?
So Dan, I'll make one comment and then turn it over to Sarah Feinberg. We have, first of all, let me talk about the colleagues who left. They were colleagues whose experience ranged from over 40 years of honorable public service to 36, I think, in the case of Frank Giesecke, to decades in the case of some others. Turnover is a natural thing. I think many of our colleagues delayed their departures to get us through the pandemic. We have benches, deep benches, I believe, at each of the agencies, and I'll let Sarah talk about the specifics.
Sure, I'm happy to. Hi, Dan. So first, you heard my comments this morning about Frank, a wonderful colleague, and we will miss him. But we do have a very deep bench. Demetrius Critchlow and David Santoro are going to take over in acting positions as VP of Subway Operations and VP of Customer Environment and Strategy. So we are delighted that they're stepping up, and we have long had a good bench at New York City Transit and continue to. So feel very confident in that leadership.
And the next question is from Mark Hallam of AM New York. Mark.
Hey, Pat. I wanted to ask you about Andrew Yang adopting Corey Johnson's previous proposal for the city to take back operations of the subways and buses. He seems to think he could get that done early in his first term if he's elected. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I don't have any comment on any proposal, frankly, by a candidate to office. We're aware that's a proposal that's been made, and we'll watch its development with interest, but don't have any specific comment.
Moving on now to Christina Goldbaum of the New York Times. Christina.
Hey, Pat, thanks for this presser. Last month you had spoken about the possibility of right-sizing service with ridership so low to save money and give the MTA a little bit more wiggle room in 2023, 2024. I know there's obviously much greater possibilities for federal aid now, but given possible cuts from the state, I'm wondering if right-sizing service in the coming months is still on the table.
Yeah, no, Christine, it is. As a matter of fact, the Long Island Railroad, starting on Monday, is going to be reducing the number, the service that it provides, primarily in the peaks. As you know, I'm a regular rider on the Long Island Railroad, including this morning, early morning. And I think the decision that Phil Ing to bring the service down is the right one, and we're going to be continuing to monitor ridership trends, vaccination trends, and where the service should be.
And is that also the case in the subways and buses as well?
Look, I think all of this is, frankly, even in non-pandemic times, looked at regularly, and yes, we're going to look at it across the agency. And the next significant action to be taken is the one I mentioned on this coming Monday with respect to the railroad.
And moving on now to Clayton Gusa at the Daily News. Clayton.
Hi, Pat. I'll be quick. I just wanted to ask you about two distinct topics. The first one on the fare hike. Do you guys have an estimate on how much revenue you're expected to lose by delaying the fare hike? And along those lines, you're raising tolls next month, but keeping the transit fares flat. Have you done any analysis that might show that might sway New Yorkers to get out of cars and return to mass transit at a higher rate than previously expected?
Yeah, with respect to the second question, Clayton, that is a possibility and frankly would be a desirable result in terms of congestion, air quality, and additional revenues on subways and buses or Long Island Railroad or Metro North. With respect to the first question, why don't we come back to you afterwards, because obviously it's going to depend on what month you assume the fare increase goes into effect, and I'll ask Tim Minton to come back to you on that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask one more about some recent reporting about people in New York City struggling to get to 24-hour vaccine sites overnight during the 1 to 5 a.m. shutdown. Now, Pat, I know you said you'll defer to state health officials, but you're also a state transportation official. Do you feel right now that you are living up to your duty as the job when your authority or the authority you run is unable to provide subway service so that people can get vaccinated?
The premise of the question is absolutely wrong, right? We are running bus service extensively in the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. We're running subway service, Metro North and Long Island Railroad the rest of the day. With respect to the railroad, it has added stops at the Willets Point station for the vaccination center at City Field on every train on the Port Washington line, which serves Willets Point, and we're going to do everything we can to get every one of our employees vaccinated, which is why we reached out to Dr. Fauci, and do everything we can to carry New Yorkers who have vaccination appointments to their appointments.
And the next question is from Danielle Moyo of Politico. Danielle, good afternoon.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to follow up on Michelle's question because, based on the budget book, I mean, the MTA's operating budget is $5 billion. The legislature passed $6 billion, and in previous years it's been $6 billion. So the MTA must not have to speculate. You must have some kind of idea on what is causing the budget gap. So can you give any more context as to how much of that is from state withholding and how much of that is from revenue loss?
Well, Bob, do you want to speak to that?
Look, I think we discussed that in the past year's budget, it was about $261 million that we took because we had heard that the state said there was possibly a 20% reduction in aid to localities. It looks like we're going to receive more than what we had budgeted from last year. We don't know what's going to happen in the year to come, this year. And again, I think the state budget director and the governor were pretty explicit in saying it depends on how much federal aid they receive. The more federal aid they receive, the less likely something would be to affect us negatively. The less money they receive, the more likely it is. But again, we can't speculate because we don't know.
And now moving east to News Day, where Alfonso Castillo is standing by. Alfonso.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. There were some reports on social media about a Long Island Railroad assistant conductor by the name of Steve Rosati being involved in the Capitol Hill protest riots. And subsequently, a lot came out about this guy being very active on social media with some pretty out there far-right extremist views. Wondering if this was on your radar and whether any kind of disciplinary action is being taken against him.
Yeah, look, I'm going to turn to Phil Eng in a second on the disciplinary action and let him speak to that. I'll speak to the social media and the Capitol. What he's said on social media is outrageous, despicable, and the sign he's a jackass. His conduct at the Capitol ought to be investigated, and is being investigated. And with that, I'll turn to Phil.
Thank you, Pat, and hi, Alfonso. Yes, we are investigating the actions in accordance with the CBA. The employee has been relieved of his duties while we conduct this investigation, and that's really all I guess I'm at liberty to say right now while we do this.
Is he relieved with or without pay?
Per the CBA is with pay.
Can I ask, is there anything governing employee conduct, like some kind of code of conduct, regardless of whether there are any criminal charges brought against him relating to the Capitol protest?
There are codes of conduct. That's all part of our investigation.
Okay. Pat, if I could have a follow-up. Back early on in the pandemic, I asked you about some of the Long Island Railroad's on-time performance numbers, which, not surprisingly, when ridership really plummeted, got a lot better. At the time, you said, essentially you should take these with a grain of salt, given some of these circumstances. But today I saw that the MTA issued a press release sort of boasting about all these figures throughout all the agencies, including at the Long Island Railroad. So how much should be taken of how well, in particular, Long Island Railroad did with on-time performance, and really all your agencies, given the unique circumstances of the last year?
I think your question is, how should on-time performance be evaluated in a once-in-a-100-year horrific pandemic, which is the circumstances in which our employees were working under since beginning of March. They're now in the 11th month. And while ridership is down, the on-time performance at each of the agencies under the circumstances is admirable, and frankly an extraordinary achievement on the part of our workforce.
Next question is from Ben Kabak at 2nd Avenue Sagas. Ben.
Thanks. Hey, Pat. Just a quick question on congestion pricing. If DOT moves quickly to lift this hold that they've placed on congestion pricing, how soon can the MTA have the infrastructure up and running and start getting the revenues from it?
Well, Ben, we've been working throughout to advance the project. We've taken it basically as far as we can without action from the U.S. DOT. We are optimistic that the new team at DOT, when it's in place, will act expeditiously with respect to our application, because I believe our application is righteous and ought to be approved. Obviously, it's a major pillar of the funding of the capital plan. We met way too many times to recount with the old team, and as soon as the new team is in place, we look forward to meeting with them and to moving the project and the funding forward.
And we move on to Dave Colon of Streets Blog. Dave today is rocking the Knicks, but he's hedging with some Brooklyn gear down below, so he's got it all which ways. Dave.
Yeah.
Knicks are in the 8th seed right now. It's our year, baby. Pat, you mentioned earlier in the meeting that the fare hikes are still on the table. There's still a really big need for revenue, which I guess everybody agrees on, but I'm curious if the agency is still agnostic on some of the revenue raisers that progressive activists, some state legislators have been pushing, the Invest in New York Act, other series of taxes. When I asked you about it earlier this year, kind of said, care where the money comes from. Is there a dog in the fight at this point? Do you want to see the state Senate and the Assembly pass some legislation to raise money that can go to the MTA?
Yeah, so Dave, my agnosticism, if that's a word, I think it is even stronger than it was before. There are a number of funding sources and possibilities being discussed by policymakers at the state level and at the federal level. We're looking for funding, something that ideally is recurring, sustainable, and grows with the economy and is not terribly volatile. But we're agnostic as to the source of funding, and I think we've been crystal clear over the last 9, 10, 11 months about the extent of our needs for funding, both on the operating side and the capital side. We were gratified and acknowledged the importance of the $4 billion that was passed in December, the last COVID relief bill in the lame duck session, and we're looking forward to additional funding, and our ask, continues to be on that score, $8 billion.
And next we go to the WCBS 880 radio correspondent, Peter Haskell. Peter.
Hey, Pat, I want to follow up on Clayton's question. Not only how much would you lose each month, any idea how long you would put this off? And at some point, might the fare hikes have to be higher because of these delays? At what point might that happen?
Well, Peter, with respect to time, several months is what we're thinking about. We'll come back to all of you with the estimates of deferred revenue or unrecognized revenue because of not proceeding with the fare increase at this point in time. As you know, Peter, we have built in increases this year in 2020, fares and tolls, the same thing with respect to 2023. The proposed increases now are only slightly above the inflation rate in a very low inflation environment, but those are the dynamics around the issue.
All right, moving down the dial to WNYC Public Radio, where Steve Nesson is ready to go. Steve.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, cool. Just to follow up on the budget, can you just explain a little bit more, maybe what is Budget Director and Board Member Robert Mujica said about the $1 billion difference in MTA funding, and when will MTA dedicated taxes return to the MTA? And separate question, why do you need Anthony Fauci to remind your workers to get the vaccine? How deep is the reluctance at the MTA to get the vaccine? Because me and my family and friends are all ready to sign up. They're chomping at the bit to get a vaccine.
Yeah, so look, on that last question, I think it's the same here, right? I think, and we think that personal words from Dr. Fauci, the most trusted person in America, who's the subject matter expert and a former strap hanger, will help, increase. But the demand for vaccinations here at the MTA, like in other places, significantly exceeds supply. Supply is a federal government issue. There's a new administration in town, and hopefully that'll be addressed. But frankly, I expect that transit workers will have a higher acceptance of the vaccination than, frankly, the general public in New York or around the country, given the grievous losses that have been suffered here and in the New York area. And adding Dr. Fauci's words and wisdom and credibility, we thought was important. And frankly, his message, while it's directed at the MTA, it really applies to, and we're going to do everything we can to get the word out, to New Yorkers across the region.
There was a budget question there. Did you want to address
Yeah, sorry, on the budget question, yeah, I think Bob Ferran answered it, a minute ago, and the governor and the budget director were quite clear that it's going to depend on the extent of federal aid. They had a worst case and a better case. I think there's reason to be optimistic given the new administration in Washington, the control of the Senate by the Democratic Party, the ascension of Senator Schumer to Majority Leader, first ever in New York, who I personally believe will turn out to be one of the great majority leaders in the history of the Senate. There's lots of reasons to be optimistic, but we will see what happens in Washington as days and weeks pass.
And while we're on the subject of finance, let's spin to Paul Berger of the Wall Street Journal. Paul.
Hi, Pat. I just wanted to follow up on Christina's question. You talked about the commuter rail and right sizing of service. Why haven't you right sized subway and bus service already?
We are looking at it. We're conscious and continue to be conscious about social distancing and the essential workers that we're carrying on all our facilities. Obviously, bus ridership is at 50% or so, and increasing, and there's every reason to believe that subway and bus ridership will increase going forward, and we're going to continue to look at them. The next action we're going to take is the one I mentioned on Monday at the railroad.
And on to David Meyer of the New York Post. David, you are up. David is looking for the unmute button.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Good afternoon, Pat Foy. I have two questions. One, just following up on Stephen's question. Are you not concerned about vaccine resistance or aversion or anti-vax conspiracy among workers, and that deterring them from getting the vaccine? And my second question is related to, there was a mention of a homelessness audit. Is the MTA going to make that audit public? Because it's obviously an issue of great concern both to its workforce and the riding public. Thanks.
So on the first question, look, the vaccine hesitancy, which I understand is the term, is not an MTA issue. It's a local issue, it's a state issue, it's a regional issue, it's a national issue. As I said before, I expect that MTA workers will be vaccinated at a higher rate than the rest of the region and the rest of the country. My belief, because of the fact New York was the epicenter, we think that bringing Dr. Fauci's words and video, what was important in getting that message out, we're going to continue to do that. And the homeless research will, I believe, be released when it's completed.
All right, let's go to Jose Martinez out there in the city. Jose.
Hi, Pat. A quote today from the new transit chief at the NYPD. She said that there's still the impression that crime is out of control on the subway, and she said that is not the case. After so many months of hearing from you and from others at the MTA about the surge in crime, can we just get some feedback on that and her comments that it's perhaps a little overheated, the crime issue in the subway?
Well, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah in a second, but let me start with this. First, we're glad that Chief O'Reilly and her approach of placing police officers and herself being on platforms and riding subways. I think that's important. The number of Transit Bureau police officers on the job has increased. That's a positive. We clearly need and want more. And let me turn it over to Sarah.
Thanks, Pat. Look, it has been a pleasure. Has been a pleasure and continues to be a pleasure to work with Chief O'Reilly. She's been a good partner to us. And as we've said a couple of times, one of the most useful things to happen over the last, and impactful things to happen over the last several weeks is to have the full complement of NYPD Transit Bureau officers back in the system after they were pulled away for the protests over the summer. Look, we've been having a debate over numbers and figures, the entire time I was on the board and have been in this position. And my guess is that debate is as old as time. I will always feel like any significant crime that happens in our system is too many, one too many. I want people to enter the system and feel very safe, very secure, and I feel responsible for them from the moment they enter the system until the moment they leave. So I'm probably never going to stop pushing for whatever I feel like I can ask for that I believe will make the system as safe and as secure as it can possibly be for our employees and for our riders. And I don't think either, Pat Foy or I have ever been quoted as saying anything's out of control. What we've said is we want these numbers to come down, and we're worried about what we do see. And even one of these events is just far too many. So I think there's a healthy posture between ourselves and the NYPD on this, and there probably always will be. We're always going to want more, and to do everything we possibly can to make sure that people are as safe as they possibly can be.
The other thing I'll add to Sarah's comment, which I endorse in total, we also need action from the area's district attorneys in terms of prosecuting assaults and violations against not only our customers but our employees, including for spitting and other things. That's extraordinarily important, and we believe the DAs and their offices can do more.
And we're going to close it out today with Ariama Long from Kings County Politics. Ariama, you are batting cleanup today.
Hi, how are you? Quick question. I heard Phil Ang mention in the hearing that they saved on upgrades and renovations because they didn't have to pay overtime and workers for weekends. So I was wondering if that was also a trend for the MTA. And do you see that ever getting in the way of like the 24-hour, 24/7 service making a comeback as we know it pre-COVID?
So good question. One is we're very focused on reducing overtime where we can do that without compromising safety or public service. We've been successful in doing that last year. We have significantly higher goals for 2021, which I believe we will achieve. And the reduction in overtime that Phil Ang and his other agency president colleagues reported is to be applauded. Control of overtime has nothing to do with the 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. Closure. Either it's continuation, we look forward to the day when we can bring 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. Service back. And we're going to continue to focus on overtime where it's not needed and where it doesn't compromise safety or customer service, and try to wring every dollar out of it.
And thank you, Pat, Sarah, Ariama, Bob, everybody else. Have a great afternoon. Good night from Lower Manhattan.